All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Let's see. Uh, yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about the hearings that's going on around special counsel Hur and his investigation, examination, interrogation of Joe Biden with relation to Biden's mishandling of classified information, and that is going to be entertaining. Legion opens with the N word. Well, so that's a start. And totally appropriate because we're talking about Adam Schiff. Let's do this. And good morning. Sergeant Major says, good morning, voters. Indeed. Okay, Dad says, I think most Americans are going to be overwhelmed and then unconcerned about the presidential election. I am terrified that you may be right about that. And actually, there's a thing. And we're almost looking. Okay. Good morning. I hope you've all got a good hot cup of coffee. The Georgia primary was yesterday, and of course Donald Trump just completely owned it. 84% to 13%. Nikki Haley being the only other one to appear on the ballot. And of course, as you all know, she dropped out. So it's telling us that she got 13% of the, wrong button. So CNN's. I've got the roundup from CNN, and I chose CNN for this particular article. We're going to talk about Schiff and her, but I want to talk about this for just a minute first. CNN's reporting that 13% voted for Nikki Haley, but they've got the by-county breakdown, and I'm going to try to blast through that as quickly as I can to kind of paint you a picture here. Georgia has a lot of counties, so we'll try to do this quick, but you'll see, just Appling, Atkinson, and Bacon County, 94, 97, 93. So the vast majority went to Donald Trump, and you're going to see that that's the case in most counties. Banks, Baker, Baldwin. Okay, so now here you go, Baldwin County. You got 10% for Nikki Haley, and I believe Baldwin includes Macon, right? Macon is Baldwin County? Is that, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at, okay. No, Macon is Bibb County. Baldwin County. Baldwin County, no, Georgia. So that's Milledgeville, which is a college town. So, and I mean, 10%. So you got a college town where you got a bunch of, Sergeant Major reminds me it's the farm. Like, yeah, I know that, but anyway, you got a college town. So you got a bunch of lefty college students there. Barrow County, 8%, but you'll see, Bartow, Ben Hill, all above 90. Not Bibb, okay, 10% in Bibb. Bibb is Macon, which Macon is a big college town, bunch of commies. Bryan County, I'm not as familiar with Bryan County, but you got 15% there. So, but the point remains, where you're seeing the numbers, you're seeing them happen in basically those blue cancers we talked about. Now let's go ahead and get, oh wait, I want to see Cobb County real quick. Yeah, Cobb County. You want to talk about a bunch of commies in Cobb County. Clayton County. I'll let you guess what Clayton County looks like based on that vote. Cobb County. Cobb County's more uppity, rich white women. But you'll see the majority of them going for the Donald. Now let's get over to Fulton County, which is of course Atlanta, right? And like we say on the show often, Forsyth County is just north of Atlanta. Fulton County is Atlanta, right? Now, we know a few things about, oh, of course, I'm covering that up. Let me move my video, my feed over. There you go. So 37% in Fulton County. We know a few things about Fulton County. It is demographically more even, I suppose would be the politically correct way to say that. There's a lot of ghetto in Fulton County. And we also know that Fulton County, there are, look, if you don't believe that 2020 was stolen, okay, maybe you've got something, maybe. But if you don't believe that there are any legitimate questions to ask about what happened in Fulton County between the crates of votes that just happened to be pulled out from under the tables after the water main break. Okay, listen. They shut down the polls in Fulton County due to a water main break, which we almost immediately learned never happened. There was no water main break. That was a lie. The other thing we know, completely distinct from Fulton County, is from the primaries that we saw before Nikki Haley dropped out. Where Nikki Haley did best were places where there was an open primary and Democrats came to vote for her. It really is that simple. Like I quipped about about her winning her primary in Washington, D.C., where both Republicans showed up and one of them brought a Democrat. She won overwhelmingly in the place that least loves America, Washington, D.C. So, but, you know, you keep going, and for the most part, you see it's in the 90s. It's, okay, Glenn County, you got one there. But the counties that went, and to be clear, every county went overwhelmingly for Trump. You know, Haley was obviously BTFO'd on in this election. And not least because of I frankly don't think that these numbers would have looked different, not substantially, even if Haley had not already dropped out. But to be clear, Nikki Haley did officially suspend her campaign before the primary was held in Georgia yesterday. So, speaking of election interference, this is what I want to show you. This is what I want to talk to you about. This is from the hearings that are going on with respect to Special Counsel Hur and his investigation of the Joe Biden classified materials mishandling case. So Benny Johnson shared this.
And it was your obligation to follow that policy in this report, was it not?
It was also my obligation to write a confidential report for the Attorney General explaining completely my decision.
What you did write was deeply prejudicial to the interests of the president. You say it wasn't political, and yet you must have understood. You must have understood the impact of your words. You must have understood the impact of your decision to go beyond the specifics of a particular document, to go to the very general, to your own personal, prejudicial, subjective opinion of the president, one you knew would be amplified by his political...
Okay, real quick. There's Hank Johnson sitting there next to Schiff, and dear Christ, he just looks like a fucking carp. That's really all I've got on that.
Opponent, when you knew that would influence a political campaign. You had to understand that. And you did it anyway.
Adam Schiff is berating this man for using presidential language in an official capacity, which he knows might have a political impact, and suggesting that this is somehow unethical. I challenge that you would be hard-pressed to show me a statement made by Mr. Schiff in the entirety of his career that did not actively adhere to that exact standard. The man makes a point, and fair play, he is a politician, but that is his job. And now he's accusing someone of it as if it's dirty, underhanded, unethical, which, let's be clear, it is. But being dirty, underhanded, and unethical is literally Schiff's job.
You did it anyway. And let me just go to some of the differences here between the president's conduct and Mr. Trump's. In the superseding indictment, on page...
Before he says anything else, there is a very important difference between the conduct of the president, current Joe Biden, and the former president, Donald Trump. And president is actually the important distinction here. They're trying to draw because Joe Biden got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and they found that he had retained these documents clearly, willfully, and illegally, right? Joe Biden, with full knowledge, committed a crime, a very specific crime, and that is the mishandling of classified information. Now, you can make the same statement in theory about Donald J. Trump. However, the clear distinction is this. There is a Presidential Records Act. There is, at the barest minimum, the least charitable interpretation one can have is that there is, at the barest minimum, an argument to be made in law that Donald Trump, having been the president at the time that he acquired and retained the records in question, and I'm being charitable to his opposition by saying that this is the barest minimum conceit that they must make. There is at least an argument in law that he was fully within his authority as the president to use his unilateral authority to declassify classified material for any purpose whatsoever when he retained those documents. All the allegations about Donald Trump refusing to turn over documents, those are false. He has the receipts. We've seen the receipts. They turned documents over to the archivist and said, what can we keep? The archivist gave him back the documents. The DOJ sent him a demand that he return certain documents. He did, and those documents were again returned to him. It looks very much like the current government went out of their way to make sure that Donald Trump would have classified documents in order to excuse the midnight raid. As this story has been developing, it looks like what the real motivation in the Trump case is that Donald Trump retained a specific document, which is a binder that includes detailed classified evidence related to the Russia hoax, which reportedly is a collection of damning evidence that points explicitly and specifically to those actors and actions involved in the Russia hoax, which was and the Ukraine hoax, which was crafted in order to fabricate an impeachment proceeding. I want to take you back just a little bit before that and remind you that before he was even elected, let alone sworn in, once he was known to be the candidate, there are multiple Democrats on record, on video, saying, we will impeach him. And even being challenged. Now, hold on a minute. He isn't the president yet, because he hasn't been elected yet. He's about to be, but not yet. So even though we're pretty confident he's about to be elected, the fact is that before November of 2016, he was not the president. And we had multiple Democrats on record, on video, even going so far as to draft articles of impeachment the day after the inauguration, saying that it was going to be their mission to impeach him. And then we've got all of the fabrications, and they actually impeached him twice. And at the barest minimum, there is an argument in law that Donald Trump had absolute authorization to declassify those documents. To be very clear, none of the documents, and Joe Biden is not alleged He is not merely accused to have retained these classified documents. That is not a fact that is in dispute. There is no doubt, there is no argument that Joe Biden retained the documents. And there is also no argument that he had the authorization to do so, because at no point throughout the course of the commission of his crimes was Joe Biden the President of the United States. These are all crimes that predate his election and subsequent inauguration. So there is a very important key difference between the two cases, and that is that Donald Trump was clearly by law authorized to retain the documents, and Joe Biden was clearly not only not authorized, but explicitly forbidden. And when I say in this context explicitly forbidden, as I've explained on the show before, in order to have access to material at the top secret level, especially once you get into the, it's not really higher than top secret, but once you start getting into the special compartmentalized information, the special access programs information, and that kind of highly classified sensitive material that Biden retained and then discussed with his ghostwriter, you were trained, you were briefed, you were presented with a non-disclosure agreement in which, upon signing, you were swearing under penalty of law that you understood the content of the document that you were signing, and that document included the correct methods and media for the handling of classified and sensitive material, and the legal penalties for mishandling that material, which, by the way, explicitly excludes, as an element of the crime, the element of intent, which is how they let Hillary Clinton off on doing the same thing. They said, well, she didn't mean to do it. She didn't have any intent. It is clear as it can be that there simply is not, there is no law in the United States anymore. There is only political power and persecution. The law does not help you. The law is not on your side. The law is explicitly being used against Americans.
3, it says that Mr. Trump suggested that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that he did not have documents called for by the grand jury's subpoena. You didn't find anything like that with respect to Mr. Biden, did you?
Congressman, I do not have the Trump indictment in front of me, but I need to address something that you said in your prior question. What you are suggesting is that I needed to provide a different version of my report that would be fit for public release. That is nowhere in the rules. I was to prepare a confidential report that was comprehensive and thorough of an
What is in the rules, Mr.
And I'm going to be very critical of her at this point. What her determined, right? Let's not get this mixed up. The Democrats are mad at her because he essentially said Biden isn't fit for office. But let's be very clear about how he said that. He made the argument that Biden should not be prosecuted for the crimes of which, according to her's report, there is zero doubt that Joe Biden is guilty. There's zero doubt. Joe Biden is guilty of the crime of substantially mishandling the classified information beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt. Her's contention is that in the event that were to go to trial, that a jury would be sympathetic to Mr. Biden and would not choose to convict because they would see Joe Biden as being a, quote, well-meaning elderly man who has some memory problems, right? The argument essentially being that Joe Biden is not mentally competent to stand trial for the crime. Here's the problem with that. The crime, and based on the sheer volume of classified material recovered from the 5 or 6 several locations, and that's another big difference between the Trump and Biden case. Trump had the documents that he's authorized to have in a secure room at his private residence. Biden's documents were found at his private residence in damaged, waterlogged boxes in his garage, just stacked up like trash. And also in several offices in several states and several cities of various nonprofits and political organizations with which he was associated or had worked. Trump had documents in one place that he was explicitly authorized to have them. Biden had documents scattered all across the northeastern seaboard, right? But Herr's contention that he shouldn't bring charges because a jury will likely fail to convict based on Biden's current mental incompetence should be utterly irrelevant unless your argument is also that at the time he committed the crime, he was not mentally competent, in which case we need to be looking at his accomplices. But I don't think that's a reasonable argument either. We remember Joe Biden from during the Obama administration when this crime was committed, right? Right? At the beginning of that administration, guys, it's 2024. Right? We're basically one president away from that being 2 full decades. So we're talking about a period of over 10 to 15 years ago, during which Biden was committing these crimes. And the question of his mental competence at the time, I've never been a big fan of Joe Biden, but I will concede that at the time that he was vice president, his cognitive decline was not as visibly and obviously advanced as it is now. But Herr's assertion is not that he was not competent to understand his wrongdoing at the time that he committed the crime. His assertion is that because he is currently mentally incompetent, and obviously so, that because that would be a factor in a jury's decision to convict or not convict, that no charges should be brought. That conclusion is ludicrous on the face of it, without even talking about the accusations of political impropriety that Mr. Schiff is attempting to level at Mr. Herr in this case. Let's finish up the last minute of this video.
Mr. Herr, what is in the rules is you don't gratuitously do things to prejudice the subject of an investigation when you're declining to prosecute. You don't gratuitously add language that you know will be useful in a political campaign. You were not born yesterday. You understood exactly what you were doing.
Okay. If Herr does not, as Schiff suggests here, gratuitously include the interpretation language of Biden's mental incompetence, then Herr does not have the excuse that he needs to do the bidding of Schiff and his allies in refusing to pursue that prosecution, in refusing to pursue a conviction based on the crime. Right? The only way Herr can pretend like it's possible to not bring charges is to make the argument that Biden is not competent to stand trial, which is what he did.
It was a choice. You certainly didn't have to include that language. You could have said, vis-a-vis the documents that were found at the university, the president did not recall. There is nothing more common. You know this. I know this. There is nothing more common with a witness of any age when asked about events that are years old to say, I do not recall. Indeed, they're instructed by their attorney to do that if they have any question about it. You understood that. You made a choice. That was a political choice. It was the wrong choice. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
So that's what we've got. We've got the Democrats got what they want. They got what they wanted in that Hur lied. Well, he didn't lie. That's not fair. Hur it is misleading because what Hur has asserted vis-a-vis the claim that Biden is incompetent to stand trial vitiates the obvious fact that his competency today to stand trial for a crime that he committed over a decade ago and continued to commit by retaining those documents over a long period are two very different claims. Right? It's not all that complicated. Joe Biden is in severe cognitive decline, has been since well before the election that he stole, and the fact that he has persisted in the clear destruction of this country, which is obviously willfully and carefully executed, which just blows my mind. Y'all, if you've seen Joe Biden attempt to stand up, you cannot reasonably come to the conclusion that the things he's signed with the clear intent of causing harm to this nation were his original ideas or actions. I would just, it's insane. I'm running a few minutes over. That's gonna have to be all I've got for you this morning. Let's go ahead and button this one up. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.